Welcome back. As promised before, we are now turning our attention to the future. In a world that is currently shaped by algorithms, artificial intelligence, and rapidly evolving forms of digital storytelling, new questions arise, like how will Holocaust commemoration evolve and what new responsibilities will emerge as a result. And to help us navigate these questions, it's a great pleasure to invite an expert whose work focuses on digital history, memory cultures, and the mediation of historical knowledge in the digital age. Please join me in welcoming Professor Dr. Eva Pfanzelter with her Endnote, The Future of Holocaust Commemoration in the Digital Era. It's an honor for us to have you here with us. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It's an honor to be here, distinguished guests and colleagues. So I think we've had a long day. We have all had a long day. All the highlights are over. We are coming to the end. I think that's why this is called an endnote. And I also think the reason not to make it end like the end of all of this these things is to look into the future. I was asked to talk about the future of Holocaust commemoration in the digital age, but I am a historian, so I'm used to looking into the past and to maybe, hopefully, learn from the past. So forgive me if I am not a futurist, but I will do my best to look into the future. But before we dig into these things, let me get rid of some facts. In 1932, there were 2 elections. In the first elections in July, the NSDAP, the Nazi party, was able to gain 37% of the votes. From then on, it was actually considered that the Nazis were unstoppable. So there was no breaking their rise to power. This was not true. There were new elections in November 1932. And the Nazis actually lost 4.2% of the votes. So they came to 33% of the votes. It was then the conservative circles that actually heaved Hitler to power. And today, on the 30th of January, in 1933, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, yes, you may look at the watch, Hitler was actually made Reichskanzler of the German Reich. So 93 years ago, this is what started, what still keeps us occupied up until today. End of history lecture. Let's now move on to, I would say, uncharted territory, to many uncertainties and to many endurances that we have to face if we dig into this digital era. For many decades, the Holocaust occupied an almost sacrosanct position in collective memory. Especially it was supported by museums, memorials, research institutions like my own. And it was carefully curated through traditional media. I think the digital turn, or the digital era as we call it, has fundamentally changed this landscape. And the internet became more and more an indispensable instrument for public history on the one side, for education, for political engagement, and also for everyday encounters with the past. As a result, I would say Holocaust memory has increasingly become encountered in new, often uncontrolled, and sometimes problematic ways, frequently or mostly beyond the reach of traditional Holocaust institutions, if we may call them so. This transformation actually forms the core of my book, which asks basically how digital technology has changed and has shaped these memorial cultures surrounding the Holocaust. It's open access, so you do not even have to pay for it. In my book, I examine basically the evolution of Holocaust memory in these 4 distinguished phases. And unfortunately, I won't be able to walk you down memory lane of the history of the internet also to say in detail. But I have to start at some point here, actually at the third phase. So basically because I think that's the lens from where we look forward. And from there to basically try to infer current trends that point towards the future. So, no, we're not going to talk about this. So we're going to start right here. I think from the late 2000s, so basically starting from 2007, I would say platforms like Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, as it was called, X, before it was called X, and Instagram later on turned digital communication into spaces of active participation. Where users increasingly became also producers, not just consumers. With the rise of prosumers, as they were called, this new species of users, remembrance also shifted towards more technical competence than just the faculty of memorizing things, of bringing things in our brains together. Scholars describe this shift widely. So there was all kinds of terms that come up at this point: connective memory, network memory, global memory, and I could name you many others. So we have rising tensions in this participatory digital memory. As this emerges, these tensions also change around tone and appropriateness, revealing the frictions between institutional authority and user-driven expression. And Alex, we have Dancing Auschwitz already, then a very milestone, I would say, in breaking down institutional barriers of commemoration. And Adolek Kohn, in his very famous YouTube video in 2010, danced with his daughter and his nephews and nieces in front of memorial camps all over Poland and Germany. This breaking of traditions was, on the one hand, celebrated as a celebration of life, also because it was in the background. It had the sound of Gloria Gaynor, "I Will Survive." On the other hand, of course, it was condemned as tastelessness, as over-emotionalizing serious topics, and so on and so off. So amplified, and the second big, I think, milestone that we see here is equally a Facebook profile that was created back then for Henia Stamirsky, who reached for the first time the followership of 5,000 friends, which was not allowed to be passed back then. So today, unimaginable, there was this limit. One could not have more than 5,000 friends. And it was shut down by Facebook after that because they realized this hyping, trending, dead, killed Jewish person, young boy, does no longer live, and this is not how we intended Facebook to work. They changed that after that, but just to say we have these really iconic, I would say, two social media initiatives that actually really changed a lot in our memorial landscape. So what we see here is basically this is why I actually wanted to point out that we need this phase here, because I think this is actually where the future of digital Holocaust commemoration begins to take shape. Between participation, authority, a lot of emotion, and also evidence that we still have in there. New storytelling formats have been talked about before. The architecture of social media platforms encourage the emergence of new storytelling formats, often short, simplified, or fragmented, including very many micro-narratives, and of course, hashtags and memes. Hashtags became the key mechanisms allowing users to aggregate content, to shape online discourse, and to connect otherwise very disparate posts into shared, loosely coordinated memory practices. These formats, of course, now enable broad participation, lowering barriers to engagement and allowing individuals to contribute their personal meanings and stories to a wider collective memory landscape. The casual aesthetics of social media particularly selfies at serious places, as it was called, and especially selfies at, at camps and memorials, were, of course, usually seen as trivializing or disrespectful to the memory. Yeah. Disrespectful to the memory of the survivors and the victims. What became more visible here, and we are here around 2016-17, is an ongoing tension between accessibility and gravity, between new participation and new forms of participation of remembrance, and the experiences, the expectations that established memory actually had of solemnity and restraint. Alongside critique, we also see some deliberate creative adaptation of social media formats to convey Holocaust history to younger audiences, often reaching millions, I'm sure, maybe not, but the older ones among us still remember Eva's story at 2019 Instagram project, which basically narrated the final months of a Holocaust victims' lives through Instagram stories. And beyond all, these memes, of course, have become an inherent feature of digital cultural communication. By design, they simplify and condense complex ideas, sometimes productively and sometimes, of course, problematically. And here is just one of those memes that were really trending in 2015. The Mufti made me do it. I think what we really have seen is an acceleration at the beginning of the pandemic, of the COVID pandemic. I think it marks an inflection point that triggered a very rapid shift towards fully digital forms of Holocaust commemoration. What became almost immediately visible was the migration of traditional commemoration forms into digital worlds. So basically the one-to-one transformation from offline commemoration to online commemoration, like we see on the right-hand picture here, the 75th commemoration of the liberation of Auschwitz, that was one-to-one for the first time really transported through Twitter all over the world. So rather than initiating new directions, I think the pandemic accelerated the development that was already there, and it accelerated in speed and also at scale, accelerating digital trends that, have been there ever since. The effect was, I think, a form of memory that became simultaneously globalized and amplified, yet also much more fragmented and distributed among different platforms and formats and audiences. I think the digital shift made explicit the dynamic character of online memory. So memory here is continuously being rewritten. It's reordered by the users, by the individual users. It includes also counter narratives here, and we have a lot of online hate, anti-Semitism, and racism that has been flourishing. So as remembrance moved rapidly online and memory became more fluid and fragmented, I think we have a foundational challenge that came into focus. How can we, as I would see myself as a researcher, also as a traditional institution of memory, react to these, or reconnect to these online commemoration worlds? And it is actually from this starting point that I want to look ahead by outlining, in my opinion, 6 trends that we see from now that I think will shape future Holocaust remembrance scenarios. So into the future. Of course, where I come from, the first trend that I see is connecting Holocaust research and memory. Research and memory infrastructures that once developed very different separate accesses to Holocaust documents, audios, videos, and so on, are now linking through archives, through museums, and a lot of scholarship is there, of course, too. So this convergence, I think, does not erase the differences that we have in the documentation of the Holocaust. There is still a lot of difficulties to arrange or to align Eastern standards, Western standards. We have problems with multilinguality, with script, with how to actually get the information into the machine. But I think we are getting closer to finding ways to connect the different dots. And I think what has already changed a lot and what we already see right now is the ability to connect dispersed records on people, on places, and on objects through all kinds of identifiers and standardized language that has been introduced. This means that connections are increasingly also spatial and material, GIS technology, archaeology, digital archaeology, and mapping. They add actually depth to our research, I think, and to our historical knowledge. A lot of but you have talked about this this morning already. A lot of access and automation has been made possible through automatic speech recognition, handwritten text recognition, new annotation tools that are emerging that we are using. And also they can, increase issues of error uncertainty and so on, but it can also help to decrease many errors that we have had so far, introducing new challenges about privacy, about provenance, and about hallucinations. The goal there, I think, is not just connectivity, but some equitable community governed, community meaning us, infrastructure that resists decontextualization and fragmentation and thus misuse. At the center of this landscape, I think, are some gateways. The big one, of course, is ERIC, European Holocaust Research Infrastructure, which increasingly, at least for us here in Europe, seems to function as a backbone for cross-border research, for discovery, rather than a standalone destination. But also what becomes clear, I think this is a layered ecosystem, I would call it, where area works alongside other big gateways, like Austrian archives or Yad Vashem or the USHMM. And so on and so on and so on. Also, the US Shoah Foundation would have to be mentioned here, and Fortin Video Archive. What distinguishes these gateways is not redundancy, so they're not doing the same thing twice and 3 times and 7 times, but I think they have complementary strengths. Biographical reconstruction, audiovisual testimony, rich metadata, allow people, places, and events to be linked across very dispersed archival collections. Beyond this, we have also the necessity, and we have some of these already in place, of aggregators and standards, our Europeana, Archives Portal of Europe, IIIF standards. This is just some technical stuff, forget it. And also we need some other gateways, some thematic gateways, like Jewish Gen. It becomes one of the central hubs if we want to trace the lives of people and so on. Looted art, I should not forget those looted art databases and Roma and Sinti archives. I think what seems to be taking shape, and here's a look into the future, or maybe I hope so, is coordinated ethical interoperability. So let's not forget about the people behind all this technology that we are creating here. So basically connecting gateways while preserving local specificities, the trees and the forest, like you said this morning, right? Managing risks around privacy. We have a lot of name variation, contexts that we lose when we extract names and places. And I think we see now that we are using networks not to homogenize the story of the Holocaust, but to make overlooked angles or overlooked history more approachable and legible. So basically what I see, I know a lot of people hope otherwise, but I see ahead is not a single archive or platform, but a networked memory ecology where connection increases responsibility and interoperability only works when context and governance come with the data. Second trend, I would say, is extended reality. So virtual realities, augmented realities, and mixed realities. All these are subsumized under the terms extended realities. But of course, here we already have a lot of artificial intelligence there. And I see two trends emerging here. What has become visible is the use of extended reality to reintroduce the spatial dimension that were long inaccessible through all these technologies that we have here. We can already observe digital twins communicated through VR, AR, and GIS technology. We see also that forensic analysis is supported very much by this technology. So basic testing lines of sight and movements that were possible and how we can move around the landscape that might no longer be even there. What is, I think, also true, for most of the time, the primary value here is not spectacle, so it's not getting attention, but it's orientation and context. Placing documents, photographs, testimonies, and so on within these new experience-scapes is, I think, at the center of those, things that I have actually looked at. But this immersion, which is always portrayed as the big benefit of ER, this also brings with it some tensions. So we can actually find that we might see some false truths in there, false certainties, if we just look from one angle to spaces, to camps that no longer exist. So we seemingly reconstruct something that might have been there, but we might also be missing something. So also these technologies have to be tackled very carefully. But I think what seems to be crystallizing right here is XR as a place-based, knowledge base, or infrastructure structure from where we can move onwards. The second, point here would be virtualizing the voices, the testimony in XR and AI. And I've heard a big sigh going through many institutions once these technologies were in place, because somehow I have the feeling that, we as traditional as Holocaust historians or institutions of memory think now we have made the survivors survive even their own death. I think this bears some risks here, and we should not forget that, what we actually do here with the memory or also with the recording of these peoples. What is becoming, and that's also why not all the platforms go towards AR, XR, and AI. There are very different platforms, and they are diverging rather than converging. I think this is actually a good thing. So we have eyewitnesses in an educational space, if you want to see it like that. Then we have dimensions of testimony that has a huge amount of scripted dialogue in there, which is being selected by AI. We have then deep contextual interviews for the archive, and of course the VR experiences like The Last Goodbye. So basically what links these different portals or platforms, ideas on how to deal with witnesses, with witness accounts, is the shared emphasis on access. So basically indexing topics, making them more accessible, making them more useful, but because we are talking about many, many hours of interview material that we actually have here. So the emphasis on access is what brings them together. The central tension that we are going to see here, and I'm quite sure of this one, is that where testimony meets conversational AI, because as we all know, AI hallucinates, and that it also does this with this material, and it loses nuance. So it loses the nuances of the language of the testimonies, and it also provokes a false immediacy. So always having an answer, because that you asked a question, it has to have an answer. I think right now what the trend is towards a constrained, pre-verified interaction, models, plural, where explicit consent for interactive and also for posthumous use. So people are dying and they cannot say, no, don't use my material because I don't want to see myself there. So we have to be very careful with this one. But I think a lot of this is happening right now. And what we don't want to see right now, and I hope never will, is voice cloning or AI improvisation with the material that we have. Yeah, the direction, so I would say right now is verification first, consent awareness in AI XR that amplifies testimony as evidence. So also ensuring that survivor voices remain authoritative through provenance and also context, and not AI simulation. Yeah, so to bring this trend to an end, I think the future of spatial immersion is not about realism or presence alone, but about using space to make certainty evidence and context visible without turning trauma into a spectacle. Yeah, social media, my third trend, it's not going to go away, I'm afraid, not even with AI. In stark contrast to the curated and authoritative platforms, social media environments constantly generate informal and very platform-specific Holocaust trends that operate with very different norms and noises. What we can observe is that every new platform, and there's new ones coming, I'm sure of that, reshapes Holocaust-related content through its own affordances. So short-form videos, TikTok is a new one here, algorithmic visibility, and rapid circulation in filter bubbles. The defining feature of this shift is the rise of a very highly personalized and micro-narrative memory landscapes, which collapses with historical distance and historical depth that we would like to see. On TikTok, especially projects like those of the Forma and Lily Ebert, I know there are newer ones, but I think they were, again, one of those milestones in digital Holocaust memory. They demonstrate how survivor-centered storytelling can reach new audiences at scale, at an unprecedented scale, one has to say. Yeah, and shaped also by the logic of the platform more than by our traditional archival conventions. What remains unresolved, I think, is how these formats simultaneously expand reach while making it easier, intentionally or not, to cross established lines around context, authority, representation, and so on and so on. Yeah. On the other hand, so maybe that was a good part of social media. On the other hand, what has clearly intensified is a complex mix of denial, distortion, harassment. I would not even have to say this today because we've heard a lot of this morning. Also, a lot of this discussion this morning was about digital stuff. So we have this all the time. What is quite distinctive in social media is, of course, that we have comments that are being instrumentalized. We have bots that create filter bubbles. We have coordinated targeting and reporting that accompanies these social media practices. Yeah, so an observable shift here is that especially institutions of memory try to embed authenticity directly into the content through watermarking. We have heard this today, whatever this is going to be in a digital world, and also to pointing to institutions of memory across platforms. So rather than reactive regimes, but this is also something that's coming very, or maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, very slowly, rather than reactive regimes of social media, now the institutions start increasingly adopting proactive regimes in social media, so doing their own projects, not just reacting to what is out there in social media. What do? Usually they have house rules, they have watermarks, they have pre-made, or they moderate content because we just cannot let loose here. And they have escalating pathways defined there. What is also becoming clear, social media is going to become AI saturated, so more and more AI stuff is going to be, artificial intelligence stuff is going to be in there, and responses are converging on preparedness rather than on detection alone. So we have to be prepared. This is going to happen. We cannot just wait for it to happen. This is going to happen anyway, so we should talk now about how to react to these AI-generated social media bubbles that are going to basically run over us. I'm convinced of that. And I think also as Holocaust memory circulates through social media platforms, authority no longer resides within in the institutions. I think this is long past. But in formats, a lot of it is in algorithms, in audiences, reshaping what becomes visible, viral, and vulnerable. Okay. Fourth trend, I think this one is a big one. You might like it, the younger people among us, gamification. What still characterizes most of AAA games, and just for those of you who don't know, that's the big games from the big studios making lots of money, is our World War II titles. And they have a very combat-focused gameplay, so to say, where the Holocaust largely is either not even talked about, which is a good thing, I think. But we all have a cultural background. Many of us have that. So in some angles, it is always in the background there. At the same time, there are signs of change. We have very few, but we have diverse casts, and in a few cases, even embedded documentary context in these large games. And I picked out Colette here, which was introduced as a short film in the AAA game Medal of Honor Above and Beyond. This introducing historic facts into a game was seen as a landmark, and it was also Oscar nominated, one has to say. But I think the main dynamics here lie not so much in the game, but in the area surrounding the game, so to say. So in the chats, in Discord servers, in mod communities that are part of gaming, and we have seen many bubbles that normalize revisionism here, hate, anti-feminism, reshaping historical meaning through social interaction. I don't know who of you knows about this, but we have had this huge Gamergate controversy in 2014 that actually has demonstrated how coordinated harassment networks can really silence people that actually stood up for the people being attacked. There, anti-feminist. There was an anti-feminist controversy, but these coordinated harassment networks really also silenced the people themselves, the creators, the educators, and journalists attempting to introduce some nuance. And this is a pattern that has evolved ever since, but it continues to be part of the current gaming platform cultures. What is emerging is a structural insight. So that harm and context are design questions. So it's part of the entire environment. It's not something that happens occasionally. So there is also some insight on the side of the platform or the gaming creators, but I would say these are in the very much in a minority. Mostly, even up until today, commercial priorities often limit engagement and how far these approaches go to make these environments human healthier, so to say. The second part here that I would like to introduce, we've seen this rising a lot, is serious games and ethical design. So alongside these AAA games, a distinct ecosystem of serious games has emerged, often developed by smaller studios and museums, by indie studios and museums. They do not center on combat, but they center on everyday life, repression, resistance, moral choices that have to be made. We can already see some stable design patterns. Through the Darkest of Times was the first one by Paint Pocket Games in Berlin. They've just launched their third game, and there are more and more that we see coming up here. What distinguishes these projects is their educational logic, of course. Sources are placed inside these games, so primary sources, historical sources, interview materials placed inside these games. Reflection is prompted explicitly, so people have to think before making choices. And there's lots of teacher guides that surround these games, which does not mean that they are necessarily boring. I don't know how many of you have actually played any of these. Have any of you, may I ask, interrupt? Has any of you played any of these games through the darkest of times? No. Bullenhuserdamm, I encourage you to play Wir erinnern, wie Kinder von Bullenhuserdamm. It's really interesting. And not just because of my Stern, but I think it's really well made. So what these games bring together is a shared ethical grammar. So there are no reward loops for suffering, if tied to suffering, and there is extreme caution around perpetrators. They are not playable, and they're not there, clearly visible. There is also clear labeling of reconstruction and fiction, as opposed to where we have the facts. So I think the direction here is towards responsible scalability, prioritizing, again, access to the Holocaust through a new medium that has been highly used by especially younger audiences. And I think what we really see right now is that games are becoming public arenas for historical meaning. So we cannot ignore this. I think we really should actually maybe play a little more. 5, artificial intelligence. Of course, this needed to come. On the positive side, as you mentioned today, if designed for evidence, I think there are many things AI can help us make a big step forwards also in Holocaust research. Like we said before, AI can help us reconcile names and places and events across holdings, across nations, across borders, across languages. I think this is a really big gain. A clear gain also lies in text recognition, handwritten text recognition, automated speech recognition, and so on and so forth. When tightly constrained, so when we guide it, which we have to do, I think otherwise it's going to do other things, pattern analysis can surface. So basically it's showing us things that we with the human eye, we're not able to see in these huge amounts of data that we have. So what we are beginning to see, and we have the first system out there, are retrieval augmented systems. So basically that are systems that only trained on a certain material, and they really give us a very good results, or we have really good results from them. And what we also see, an emerging principle, is provenance by design. So linking always to the original data when and if we use AI. So basically here we use AI as an evidence amplifier, not as an author or creator. That I think is the main point we need to make. Of course, there's also the downside with AI. What has become clear is that AI systems learn from biased, noisy, and often very toxic data. This is not an edge case. So hallucination is intrinsic. It's part of how these systems work. And the most destabilizing risk lies in synthetic media, so created data on which the large language models should then learn again to be better, to function better. What appears to be forming is, right now, is an emphasis on authenticity, infrastructure, and participatory governance. So I'm sure that AI noise will grow, so AI trash will also grow. There is no illusion about that. But I think containment remains possible, and especially in our case, from what we are talking about, institutions have a really big responsibility here, archives, museums, educational spaces, to continuous shared memory work rather than technical fixes alone. Last night, because I was interested, is this even true what I'm saying here? This is my coming from the university wishful thinking. So I asked ChatGPT, Gemini, and Copilot, can you contain yourself? Can you, as an AI, could you be able to be contained without interference from institutions and so on? And All three platforms clearly said no. I mean, it's a stupid question to ask an LLM that's trained on the past, but still said no. And the most clear answer actually came from ChatGPT, because it said, no, there needs to be institutional interference, and you need to talk to the platforms that created me, because I am trained on social media, which has lots of extremist echo chambers. I mean, clear insight. I'm not saying that this is true, but we also see the emergence of alternate realities coming from AI. I don't know if you've realized, we have a new Wikipedia. And what's it called? Who knows? Yeah. Yes, thank you. Grokpedia. Grokpedia is an AI-created Wikipedia, because a certain person in the United States is not happy what Wikipedia is producing, and so it has instructed Grok, the mask AI, to create a new Wikipedia. You can look into it. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't give them more food and scale. But still, I'm just saying. So I think AI will increasingly shape how Holocaust history is accessed and interpreted, but its legitimacy will depend on whether it amplifies evidence and provenance, or it produces what it produces with hallucinating from what we have. And the last thing, we are getting to an end, don't worry. What I really think is troublesome is the monetization of Holocaust memory. We are talking about non-fungible tokens, NFTs. To understand this trend, NFTs function less as an object and more as claims of ownership or control over digital representation recorded on a blockchain, which is a commercial database, so to say. What is being traded here is not historical material, but a token that says this material that I'm betting on basically is unique and has a market value. So tokenization risks detaching memory totally from its commemorative or educational framing, I think. And I had a lot of ethical questions myself. I could see myself quite repelled by this. Market incentives here drive, of course, this idea to mint historical Holocaust memory. And of course, but here we are talking about simplification and sensationalism, because otherwise this wouldn't make money. Right? So we have two current examples that already shaped this debate. That was, on the one hand, Claude Lanzmann's Spectres of Shoah NFT by Adam Bensheim in 2021, and charitable NFTs for survivor memories, and I just picked one here by Cassidy Naomi. But why I'm so worried about this, a lot of this has been sold. I think it's what's been written by Hadar Jabotinsky and Ohad Dan, NFT fraternities. What if somebody starts minting Holocaust denial, Holocaust distortion? Basically, if you create one of these NFTs, they are unremovable from digital spaces, which means that we could also see Holocaust denial minted for eternity. And with this, I come to an end. So let me step back a little bit from the individual technologies, returning to the larger picture. What we have traced, or what I've tried to trace here today, is not 6 separate developments, but something like a connected trajectory, from linked infrastructure, research infrastructure, to virtualizing memory, inviting participation, introducing play, automating interpretation, and finally, exposing memory to market logics. Taken together, these transformations show that digital memory both democratizes and I also think destabilizes, as we all experience right now. It expands access, participation, visibility, but it also unsettles long-standing assumptions about authority, context, and permanence. Digital spaces operate by speed. Everything has to be very quickly done, scalability, and the constant reordering. And we already have seen the consequences. So the blurring of institutional and individual narratives, the growing influence of platforms and markets, and the paradox, which is actually quite interesting, that we have more and more, the more and more content we have, the more and more knowledge we have, the less understanding and the less certainties we have out there. I think in such a landscape, the central risk is not denial, no longer, unfortunately, denial and distortion. It's actually really a banalization, a loss of specificity, and in the end, the erosion of trust in evidence itself, as we clearly see every day. At the same time, I would not like to end on a note of decline, but I also see a positive thing. So I also see emerging orientations that we see here. What we see right now is greater attention is being given to provenance and transparency. We see new forms of contextualization that can help us. We have a new awareness of ethical design that is coming up. And we have a very new, not very new, very old, but a very strong emphasis on education and media literacy that we all see is needed very clearly. So what becomes clear is that Holocaust memory in the digital age is not something that can simply be preserved for once and for all, but it is what we are doing, what you are doing. It's a continuous work on continuous memory work. Institutions of memory, museums whatsoever, are going to remain crucial, but not as gatekeepers, I think, but as stewards of evidence to provide context, to maybe also to ask some questions, answer some questions about dignity and ethnicity in this more and more unstable and evolving media. So the future of Holocaust commemoration, to sum it up, I think will therefore depend less on any single technology than on whether our digital infrastructure are capable of carrying historical truth despite the uncertainties we have there. I think it's actually the truth that we're already living with. And let me close with this last sentence, then you're rid of me. The future of Holocaust memory will be shaped not by whether it becomes digital, but by whether digital systems can carry evidence, uncertainty, and dignity without turning history into noise, spectacle, or a market commodity. Somebody before said societies are sick, and I would like to open the discussion with, is digitality the virus? What is the medicine, if that is true? Thank you for listening.
We're not rid of you quite yet.
Yes, almost.
Because I can imagine that there might be questions from the audience. Very insightful talk with a lot of topics, many of which I have never heard of before, so thank you very much for that. Has anyone got any questions? Yes, please, at the front.
Thank you for the presentation on this topic. I would like to ask if you are aware if there is currently any project on the European level to tackle this issue. And by this project, I don't mean like finding Elon Musk or somebody after something happens, but if there is like something to tackle the problem before like some stuff is generated and uploaded.
Yeah, I'm aware of some projects. So now it's gone. The one where I said the recommendations for how using social media for Holocaust. This institution, the Landecker Foundation in Brighton, in London, is actually doing right that. They are trying to really dig into the digital worlds with having the Holocaust as the main topic there. They're digging into hate speech. They're digging into, like you say, uploading data. But I think what is also becoming clear, we will not have an influence, and we as the normal users will not have an influence. There is not a structured approach on to actually guide these AIs. The technology itself would be actually quite good. There is not an approach, and the data that these AIs or these platforms have gathered is so huge that I don't think the European Union would have the money to redo it. But the data is there. And I think the challenge right now is to what we do now coming from here is to do it in a different way. So a project that we applied for right now, we were trying to use newspapers between 1900 and 1950 all over Europe, different languages, and try to find the stereotypes that were in there. And you can imagine there are very many stereotypes in there. And then to use AI to extract those stereotypes, but then also use AI to create the counter narrative, and then to try to reintroduce these, because there's a lot of data in newspapers, reintroduce this to one of the AIs that are out there, but we don't know if we get funding, of course. But I think we have missed out on this. I'm still an outsider with my research. You would say that's something that many people should do. But like you said, many things you've never heard of. And that's usually also the reaction I get when I present also the past of the Holocaust, digital Holocaust memory. And I think we do not do enough there. And I think we should really do much more here. All of you, if you go study history, write an MA on this one. Everything else is good as well. But I think we need social media engagement. We need gamification. We need to go into these platforms, to these discords, to these chats, and participate there proactively. Not right now. We are only reactively doing there. But you're right. On a note, I applied for scholarships when I was writing my book on different, of course, institutions of memory, and I was always said, nah, that's not something we do. We can't give you a scholarship for that, to just have like a year to write your book. Yeah, but if you're interested, do it. It's really, I mean, it's troublesome, but it's fascinating, especially if you have a little bit of technological background.
So maybe the answer to that question was not yet. That there's not yet a project. But maybe? Maybe. And otherwise, like I said, I would really look into the things that they are doing here. They are continuing working on digital Holocaust memory in digital spaces, and I think they are evolving and bringing a lot of people. Actually, it's quite a lot of people, but you don't see them as a network yet, bringing them together. Thanks for that question. Yeah, we have another question right behind you. Great.
So thanks for the talk. I have a question. AI has been exponentially growing, like technology in general, for the past few years. And I'm certain we need proper legislation to control this very, in some ways, dangerous technology. But the laws have to be take some time to be made. When will we reach the point where AI outruns us, where development outruns us?
I can't answer that question. I don't know, but you're absolutely right. And the answers that the AIs gave me last night is like, no, you have to do this. You have to curve us. You have to. We need legislation because we are just going to run wild. I'm not so sure about the AIs actually becoming self-sufficient, at least not in the next couple of years. I think it's meaning like they think themselves and they do not let themselves delete. That's actually not how these LLMs work right now. So I would not be worried too much about that, but I think they can really destroy our societies, not just make them sick, but destroy them. And so I think we really need to do something. And unfortunately, so far, also with social media, the path has always been we have to talk to the platform owners and make them realize to change something, to curb their algorithms. And they can do that. And I think this is also what we have to do here. Now, of course, the situation is very tragic all over the world, all the Western world also. And we have little power to do so, but I think that doesn't mean we should not even try. And legislation will be important. Yeah, I'm sure. It's not going to happen tomorrow that AIs are going to delete us from their lives. But yeah. Sorry, no certain answers on that one equally.
Thanks. We have a question right at the back.
Yeah. Thank you for your presentation. And do you think these 6 methods, as you mentioned, should be used more frequently in school education too? Because nowadays most of the teachers stand in front of the class and say this and talk about this topic, and there's no interaction between the students and the topic. So should we use AI more often in the school for Holocaust teaching, for example?
Yes. do it. Use more than one AI, and it makes the students reflect on how here I have some data. Now let's ask AI. Let's ask them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and let's ask 3 AIs. And that I think is very instructional in the sense that then the students, at least my students, they're a little bit older than scholars, pupils in school. But then I always make them do that at the beginning when they have to write their seminar papers. I say, so we start with AI, and we have this topic, and you all do this, and you do it repeatedly, and then but why doesn't it give me the same answers twice, three times over, 5 times over? It's always a new answer or a different answer. It's a little bit different. And why does Copilot not say the same thing as ChatGPT? You teach them, oh, wait, be careful. This is just a big bag of words that comes together, and it's working on frequencies, and it's extracting from this own big bag what the answer is. And I think we really need to do this more. Just really use these AIs also to understand what they are doing. And I think we can use them very creatively, and also to help us. We can use them as sparring partners in our newspaper projects. How many times we asked him to do jobs for us which would have taken us, I don't know how long, a month to do. With these LLMs, you can do so many things, but you have to curb them. So basically, you have to contain what they're doing, and you have to know how to do this. But how should we know how to do this if we don't learn it, right? And I think what we really learned from this use or critical use of AI is don't trust them. Never. Be critical. Remain critical.
Fantastic. Maybe one more last question? Then?
They're all
now
tired.
we're rid of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much once again for joining us. So we have one more speaker left for the closing remarks today. Please let's welcome back to the stage Marina Maier.
I'm very sorry. I see everybody is very tired. I will be quick. It's just a couple of closing remarks before the dinner and reception, and before you will start networking and discussing. But I really would like to use this opportunity just to say thank you to certain organizations and speakers and people who made all this project over the last 2.5 years, I guess, possible. So, dear participants, please, I will really appreciate if we could give the big applause to everybody in the very end of my speech to save some time, and I will just go on and thank the partners and other people who were involved. So first of all, thanks to our partners from a consortium, from Bnei Brit, Yohanan and Alina for being part of the initial proposal and also helping us to open the world of European Union grants. It was our first grant. Thanks a lot to Ilya Babkin and Gabriel Suna from Bnei Akiva for integrating so much Jewish knowledge into the program events. Auschwitz Jewish Center Foundation from Poland, Anastasia, Karolina, Artur, Kamil, Maciek, and Tomek for supporting us throughout the project, for always being very approachable, professional, and especially for helping us organize the Poland study trip. Special thanks go to the European Union for funding, and our European Union project officer was actually here, but she left a couple of hours ago to catch her flight back to Brussels. And allow me to thank her personally, Ms. Oniecki, for her continuing assistance with fund administration. This is our first European Union grant, so we will learn from the experience. We also thank all the experts, all the guides, speakers who were part of this project. Special thanks go to Yad Vashem for providing trainings on witness testimonies. Special thanks go to House of Remembrance in Mauthausen-Gusen for hosting us twice for seminars and also for co-organizing local speakers for the events. Another round of thanks for our partners and friends, Tallinn Nates and Miss Peru from Johannesburg Genocide and Holocaust Center in South Africa, Professor Andrei Peto from Central European University, Petro Dalhano from Ukraine Journal of Holocaust Studies, for organizing a series of online webinars for this project. We are most grateful to Holocaust survivors for agreeing to meeting young people in smaller groups in person. This is amazing how strong-spirited these people still are. Many thanks for Diplomatic Academy, event management team led by Miluzina Bujek, for co-organizing with us, for their professionalism and assistance, and especially to Ambassador Eichtinger for the partnership. Now we come to the Austrian service abroad, current team, Jens, Alex, Jean-Loup, who were all involved in the project, especially to Alex, who is the main force behind it, carrying this project on his shoulders for the last 2 years. And a little bit of spoiler, the conference will end in a couple of minutes, but Alex will be still writing the reports to the European Union, and I guess it will no, it's not. He calls it playing ping pong deliverables with the project officer. We also thank Austrian Service Abroad volunteers behind the scenes, especially design team, social media team, for their support, but not only. I also want to express a special gratitude for people who are not here, who were at the very beginning of the project with Austrian Service Abroad. Our former head of education, Eduardo Catto, and former manager, Daniel Schuster, and also our former finance manager, Tobias Kohlberger. They were all three involved in the initial grant proposal, planning this project from the very beginning, and also involved, of course, in the financial planning. Last but not least, and I'm really trying to make it as short as possible, thanks to all participants, thanks to you all, thanks for taking this chance and going through this program, thanks for trusting us, and we do believe this knowledge and memories will stay with you, and this journey will remain an important reference point in your personal and professional lives. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marina. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for your attention today and your focus. We've now reached the end of the formal part of the program, but not the end of our journey. I would like to close by addressing some groups in the room. First, to the PATH participants who were here. You have carried stories that are not easy to carry. And what you have learned does not end here, it evolves. You are now part of a growing community of young people who stand for responsible remembrance. Thank you. Next, to those of you who are future volunteers. Today was not just about looking back. It was an invitation. Holocaust education needs committed individuals like yourselves in institutions, in classrooms, online, and in society. And now to all of our supporters and partners and everybody here. This is the final conference of the project PATH, but it is by no means the end of PATH. The PATH project has laid foundations for cooperation, for trust, and for future initiatives. What happens next depends on all of us. We're confident that these foundations will continue to grow with your support, your commitment, and your voices. Thank you once again for being here with us today, being part of this day, being part of this project. And now, as mentioned by Marina, I'm happy to invite you for dinner and a reception to continue there, the conversations that began here. Thank you very much.